welcome back to Armchair Craic, second episode of the new series. Thank you all so much last week for your lovely reception. There was a load of nice comments on the video, and I'm happy to see that you're enjoying the new format. So, plenty to get into this week. Not a great week last week for Newcastle United, losing in the Champions League at home to Dortmund, and then a draw away against Wolves, which you could probably say was a fair result on the day. But yeah, plenty to get into this week. I speak to Anil. You might have seen him on TalkSport. He's a Man United fan, so we're previewing the game for tomorrow. We've got the Arsenal game at the weekend to get into, and we've got to talk about that injury list. So we've went from being first of our Group F down to third after losing at home to Dortmund. A game which I thought we should have won going into it. We probably should have won on the day. Gregor Kobel was absolutely fantastic for Dortmund, and so was a couple of other players like Daniel Malen, who caused all sorts of bother on their right hand side. But speaking of our injuries, which we'll go into a little bit later on, Gregor Kobel came off injured at the weekend for Borussia Dortmund, so you never like to see players getting injured, but if it means he's not in goal for Dortmund next week, then I'm not grovelling. So yeah, third in Group F. Obviously Dortmund go above us, even though they have a worse goal difference than us, just purely down to the head-to-head rule that they have in the UEFA competitions. So we're sitting there in third on 4 points, with a +2 goal difference, which isn't bad. Obviously Borussia Dortmund there on -1. As you'll see on the group that's overlaid now. PSG are looking strong after bouncing back and beating AC Milan in their last game. Yeah, obviously we've got Dortmund next away, which is going to be a great trip away for you lot that are going. Unfortunately, again, armchair season ticket holder here is watching from home. So yeah, I mean, we all know what Newcastle Twitter is like. After we lose a game, it always seems to go into meltdown. There's a little bit of chaos, but I think there was the one problem that was brought up after the game, and I think rightly so. The atmosphere just seemed flat, and it's not like this was a problem that came into the game later on. It was pretty much from the start. The atmosphere wasn't great, and I think there's numerous people who are putting fingers on different points. Members are getting blamed. I'm a member myself, so that's not a finger I'm going to point blame towards. But I don't know. My feeling is too much of the level 7 family area now, especially next to the away support. I would like that to be more of what it used to be. That used to be a singing corner itself. Obviously, it's the corner opposite to the strawberry corner, which helps create the noise in the ground when that corner's booming, the strawberry corner's booming. You've got noise all the way around the ground, but it just seems a bit of a struggle from the Leazers Milburn side point of views at the minute. And then, of course, with UEFA Champions League comes corporate tickets and, more neutral fans, which obviously aren't going to be chanting along. So something needs to be done to help atmosphere in the ground. I don't know what that is. I've seen fingers pointed towards the stadium announcer. He's been there for absolutely years. I mean, he's been there since my first game, which was in 2001. So I don't know, maybe a change is needed there. Obviously, you don't want to see someone lose their job, but things are needed to be done to just help boost that atmosphere to, I mean, the level it was at with PSG. There was no qualms after that because the whole ground was absolutely jumping. So I think people are just a bit lost between the atmosphere against PSG and the game against Dortmund, because it's not like we were playing badly either. I strongly believe we should have won that game with the chances we had. We were unlucky, but just something is missing there with the atmosphere. Moving on, we played Wolves on the Saturday night kickoff, which again we are going into this weekend against Arsenal. I know I said earlier in the video a draw was probably the deserved result, and I don't know whether I am disappointed or not. I think Wolves are a team that's been very in and out of form this season, especially getting beat off Crystal Palace, who we absolutely tonked up at our place, and it's just, I think I expected it a little bit more. Obviously the squad's running thin, which we'll get onto just a little bit later in the video. But yeah, I just think we looked flat at times. I don't want to be negative towards any of our players, but there was quite a few people noted out that Kieran Trippier didn't necessarily have the best game he's ever had, and we just, I don't know, we looked flat at sometimes. It almost looked like we missed maybe having someone in like a number 10 role to help create, but we've got to be onwards and upwards now, especially with the injury problems we've got in the squad, which we'll move on to now. So as you can see on the graphic overlaid there, we've currently got 6 players out with injuries, and then obviously Tonali with his 10-month ban. We mentioned that last week, that the ban was coming, and we do just wish all the best for Tonali, and hopefully he's going to get the help he needs during this time. But yeah, Isak, groin, Manquillo, groin, Barnes with his foot, obviously that happened against Sheffield United away, Botman with his knee, which before the Wolves game we were told it would be a couple of weeks before we're seeing him back, maybe just before the international break, or he'd be back after. But now news today is saying that they still don't know what's going on, it's undiagnosed, and they're still looking at what the best solution is to help Botman get back to full fitness. So it looks like Jamal Lascelles and Fabian Shaw, hopefully for the time being, will be our starting centre-half pairing, and hopefully none of those two get injured either. Elliot Anderson has had a problem with his back. We were told again that it could be a few weeks before we see him return, which is a shame because it seemed like he'd been really getting into form. He came on against PSG, didn't look out of place for me against a top European side. And then again, Jacob Murphy plays the game of his life against Crystal Palace, and then now I'm pretty sure dislocated his shoulder, so it's a shame to see him out as well, because I mean, we've gone from having what looked like a squad with a lot of good depth in it to now we look like we're struggling again, and we're going to see players that we maybe didn't think we'd see again in a black and white shirt come back into the fold. So, big cup game tomorrow night against Man United. Obviously, the feelings of the cup final are still fresh, they're still there, they're still hurt. I think these lads are going to want revenge again. I mean, we got it when we played them at home in the league shortly afterwards, but it's just, like I've mentioned, these injuries are going to be a problem, and we really need to think about rotation and game management time for especially the players like Wilson that's had injury problems in the past. Tino Livramento, he's going to come back into the fold. I would have thought to play. He's obviously coming back from a major injury. Lewis Hall we haven't seen much of. Both of these players are both said to be playing a key role tomorrow night, so we'll see how they get on. But for now, I've now just been joined by Anil. Some of you might recognise Anil from TalkSport. He's got his own stuff going, the content, make sure to check that out. Anil, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. I think this is the first time we've had a proper chat since our university days, but I've seen the stuff that you've been doing, mate. It's really good to see, and it's good to see that you're using your Newcastle knowledge to much of good use. And it's quite funny, isn't it? Because that knowledge wouldn't have exactly come in handy when we were at university, but now it seems that your boys are the talk of the town, aren't they? So yeah, look, in terms of yourself, I'm very happy for you that your team's doing brilliantly, but I'm sure, which we'll inevitably get onto, my team isn't doing too brilliantly. But no, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks a lot. And like I said, it's really good to catch up, mate.
So, Manchester Derby on Sunday, Anil. I don't want to rub salt into the wounds or anything like that, make anything worse. Because I know I've seen your tweets after the game. You let your feelings know. So Derby Day defeat on Sunday 0 to rivals Man City, and I don't want to rub salt into the wounds. I've seen you gave out your thoughts towards current manager Ten Hag after the game. I just wanted to ask what your thoughts on the game were, and your thoughts on Ten Hag as Manchester United manager.
How long have you got, mate? I think, look, jokes aside, look, even though Man United have won the last 3 out of 4 games, almost certainly feels like Man United have lost 4 out of 4. The performances, even when Man United have been winning, the big turning point for me was the Sheffield United game, and I'll get onto that in a second. But the performances, we were promised the moment Eric Ten Hag came in that whether or not it's transitional football or dominating the ball in possession, you will know how Manchester United play. The trophies aren't guaranteed. A top 4 finish might not even be guaranteed in the first season or two, but the one non-negotiable was always Man United will have a distinctive style of play, like the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City had before, obviously, Eric Ten Hag came in. And I think one really damning thing at this moment in time is you just have to look at Tottenham, just this season, if you want to go even further back, your guys, Newcastle, it's not just about, look at the smile on your face as well. This is not going to be enjoyable. But no, I think, look, whether or not it's trophies or top 4, of course, that's what everyone's in the game for. But ultimately, you want to be able to recognize your side. You want to be able to buy a match ticket or buy access through television or listen to it free on radio, of course. You can be able to watch a team or watch a 90 minutes of football and enjoy it. I've got that enjoyment this season from watching the likes of Tottenham. The manager's been in the job, for a matter of weeks, and you can already tell, irrespective of where they finish, what Tottenham are, how they play, who's their main key players on the team. Whereas you look at Manchester United now, especially off the season that they had last year, where they exceeded expectation, they got into the top 3, they got Champions League football, and then they also got a cup as well. And you just think to yourself, to have that season, to then fall off so badly this season, it breaks my heart to say it because I'm a massive fan of Eric Ten Hag, but that's because of the manager. That is ultimately the responsibility has to 100% lie on the manager's shoulders. And I, of course, understand and I totally agree the problems off the pitch, whether it comes to the players or this farce of a takeover, it's obviously not going to be easy to go through. But you look at it and you think, the one thing you have always said, even through the Mason Greenwood stuff, when he was asked constantly about it, he said, look, I'm a football manager. My only worry is what's happening on the pitch. And I respect that. Your job is that job only. But when that job is not going the way you want it to the extent where I don't even know Manchester United's strongest starting 11, and you only got to look at the game against Manchester City, of course, the 3-0, which probably should have been 6 or 7, if we're being honest. In the second half, he had Ericsson, McTominay, Fernandes, and Mount all on the pitch at the same time in various positions. If you asked each of them players individually, if you could have one position in the team, where would you play? All of them would say, I want to play in number 10. I want to play attacking midfielder. And you've got 4 of them players dotted around the pitch. What is going on? And this is the thing I just don't understand. And like I said, I'm a massive fan of Eric Ten Hag. And I think when you say about managers, Ten Hag out or any manager out, I think that comes from disliking, doesn't it? I think that's because you don't like that individual and you don't want them and you don't want them at your club. I love Eric Ten Hag. I think he's a brilliant manager, but I just don't see how he can turn this around now, unfortunately.
There's kind of a captaincy crisis going on at Man United at the minute. There was a point made on Super Sunday after the game. Roy Keane was in agreement that maybe Bruno Fernandes isn't best fit to be your captain. I just wanted to put you on the spot, Anil, and just ask, who do you think should be Man United captain at the minute if it was to change?
I was hoping that when we agreed to do this podcast, mate, that you'd go easy on me because we go way back. But clearly with these lines of questioning, you're not giving me an easy time. But no, I think, look, I look at that squad now and realistically, no one screams a leader. I think the most ridiculous thing you could do now is give Rashford the captaincy because he's Manc born and bred and all of this nonsense. I think he's shown his worth over the last few weeks when the goings got tough for Manchester United. I look at that team and I think realistically, since Eric Ten Hag's come in, who's the only one that has been able to really stamp their authority in terms of leadership? And probably only Martinez. I know he's had a bit of a struggle at the start of the season, but it's become clear now that he's been struggling with injury. But I just look at it and I think, he's had so much criticism when he first came in about his height, about not being able to, really succeed. And I think me and you can both, really resonate with that, Andy. We've been blessed with many things, but height isn't exactly one that me, you, or Martinez have got in our lives. But I think it shows, he has gone through somewhat of adversity and he's come through that. He was one of the best defenders in the Premier League last season, and I think in terms of leadership, in terms of someone who's going to be there for a few years, I think Martinez is the only one that really strikes me as captain material really. But I think that's more damning on the whole squad. You know, how can you have a player who's only been there for over a year, basically a season, because he's obviously struggled this season, and he's the front runner for a captaincy role? I think it's very damning on the signings, as you've alluded to. I think it's very damning on the mentality and the ethos of the club at the moment. And realistically, it's honestly got to the stage now where I look at Manchester United and I'm just so dejected. I'm just so like, I don't know what the word is, mate, but I'm just so not fazed by what's happening, because I've seen this script before. I've seen how it's going to happen. And funnily enough, October, November time was the same time, a period of time that Solskjaer and Mourinho both got sacked in. So will Ten Hag even see it out till Christmas? I think he'll be a lucky boy if he does.
So I've mentioned it a little earlier in this episode, Anil, that our squad's looking thin. We've looked at our injuries, and Man United have been in a similar position this season. The likes of Luke Shaw, Martinez, Varane have all been out injured. So I just wanted to ask you, on those injuries, how are you feeling, and how are you feeling going in tomorrow night, and what's your prediction for the game?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting game, to say the least. And I just want to start off by actually giving a lot of praise to your lot. I think, when the money first came in, everyone was just assuming that, right, well, even Eddie Howe's not a big enough name. We need a massive Ancelotti, or we need something of that ilk to really match the finances. But you look at the caliber of player that you've signed, not necessarily, barring probably one or two, have they been names that everyone has looked at Newcastle and thought, okay, well, he could be a game changer. Even when Guimaraes came in, I don't really think people were giving it enough appreciation at the start. And obviously that changed, and rightly so. But I think that the style of football, I know you had a difficult result in the Champions League last week, but you just have to look back and think about how far your lot have come. To have a game against Dortmund, who were a regular Champions League side, and come off disappointed just speaks volumes. And I think that contrast with what's going on at Newcastle and what's going on at Manchester United is so evident for people to see. And I think off the Manchester derby, everyone was saying, look, well, this is the golfing class. But realistically, if Manchester City turn up against any team, there's a golfing class. And I'd probably say across Europe, that would probably be the case. But when it comes to Newcastle, you look at it and you think Eddie Howe, give or take probably a couple of months, has had the same amount of time as Eric Ten Hag. He's had less backing, if we're being totally honest, in terms of financial figures, and you just look at the difference, and if there's going to be substitutions made, which there inevitably will be, there's a style of play for Newcastle. There's, okay, the personnel may change, but the way we want to play will not change. That's the non-negotiable. And you look at Man United, and I can't even sit here as a Man United fan, as a lifelong Man United fan, and tell you as an opposition fan how Man United are going to set up against you, because I don't know who's going to play. And that changes everything, which just thinks, how can you be in such a mess after a year? But in terms of this game, I think it's absolutely massive for Eric Ten Hag, because you look at it and you think it's not just an opponent. If you lose to Newcastle, Man United don't really beat Newcastle under Eddie Howe anyway, so it's not that big if you isolate the result in individually. But you look at it and you think, this is probably the only chance Man United are going to have of winning a trophy now. I know the FA Cup's around the corner, but everyone's still in that. So that's miles away from even being able to gauge if they're even going to get to the Final Four. But you look at this now, you look at obviously Manchester City, thanks to your lot, of course. They're not in the competition anymore, and you see it as a real possibility opening up. But I'm sorry, but I just have no hope in Manchester United going into this game. I think if Newcastle even come with a 70% strength in terms of the way they normally play, and let me rephrase that. If you lot play the same way you did against Dortmund, I think you will win the game. I think it would take nothing short of a miracle for Manchester United to win that game, just because of the style of play, just because of how fragile they are now at home and away. And I just look at it and I think, realistically, their best opportunity is probably going to penalties, because then that's just a little bit more pressure for Newcastle potentially to deal with at Old Trafford. But I look at it, and I'm not just saying this because I'm obviously, of course, on a Newcastle page here, but I just don't see anything besides a Newcastle win for this. And I just look at it and I think, do you know what? Over the course of the season, who probably deserves to go through? It's Newcastle.
Anil, thank you very much for joining us on today's show. For those that might want to check out more of your stuff after today's insight, where might they find you?
Yeah, of course. So Anil Kandola is my name. It's my tag on all social media. I've do my own podcast as well called The Content. I'm on TalkSport here and there as well. So please be sure to check out any of my stuff. But more importantly, please give Andy a bit of support. This guy is absolutely brilliant. And I think the one important thing that all of you guys want to hear is he does not shut up about Newcastle. So if you do want a bit of information, if you do want a good, solid opinion from a proper fan, you're in the right place. So, Andy, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak to me today. I really appreciate it. And of course, best of luck. Not too much for the game against Man United, but for the rest of the season, of course, best of luck, mate. And I hope it brings you a bit of happiness.
You're too kind, man. Thank you very much.
So Anil's actually predicting us to win. I mean, I don't know if the Derby Day defeat is still fresh. I think if I was in the same place, it would be for me. And you know, there's been times in the past under the previous regime where your head's just under and you kind of expect the worst. Me personally, I think I can see it going to pens. I can see it being goalless. And I don't know. It depends on our lineup. If we are heavily rotated, you know, and there's players that maybe you thought wouldn't be in there. I know there's been shouts that Matt Ritchie might play, Paul Dummett. If that's the case, if we can see it out 0-0, we beat Palace at home on pens last season, and I'm quite confident in a few of our lads to take penalties. So if that was the case, I think tomorrow we can take it all the way through the 90 minutes and get the job done on pens. That's my prediction. Moving on to the weekend, Arsenal at home, 5:30 the kick-off again on Saturday. They were a team in good form. They were in good nick, just beating Sheffield United. Players like Nketiah coming in, getting a hat-trick, and it's just... Again, it's been the key topic of this video is injuries, and hopefully after the cup game tomorrow, there's going to be no more, and we can play what is our strongest 11 with the players we've got at the minute. I've mentioned this in other videos on the channel. I think it's St James's this season. We can give anyone a game just purely because of how we back the lads. Obviously, it's been an issue in some games, like I mentioned before. The Dortmund game seemed pretty flat, but hopefully everyone will be right up for it. We beat them the season that, you know, we had the major change around. We beat them convincingly that day, and it was a great result. But obviously last season, lost at home. You know, just like anyone in this league, Arsenal can have their day where it's not necessarily theirs, and hopefully it won't be theirs on Saturday, because they haven't had many slip-ups this season. Obviously, they've only drawn 3 times. They've won 7. Like I've mentioned, they've not been beat so far this season. So hopefully we can change that on Saturday. And Callum Wilson seems to be firing in the league again, which is great. I mean, there's only one person this calendar year that's put more Premier League goals in, and that's the robot. That's Erling Haaland. So hopefully Wilson remains unscathed if he plays a full 90 tomorrow, which I think a lot of people are expecting him to, since he's our only out-and-out striker that's fit at the minute. So I think if Callum Wilson's up, ready for it, firing, I think we could give Arsenal a good game and maybe nick something here. So anyway, here's a reminder of this week's fixtures. Obviously Manchester United tomorrow night live on Sky at that awkward 8:15 kickoff, which for those travelling down there, get back safe. I know there's been limited options in getting back with the last train. I think is a 10:15, which is far from ideal, but hey ho, supporters don't come first these days, as we all know. And then 5:30 kickoff Saturday against Arsenal at home, again on Sky Sport. And you may be wondering, yes, these games are on Sky Sport, but where can I watch them? Yes, of course, Newcastle Fans TV this season is sponsored by Green King. Green King are showing every televised Newcastle game this season in over 900 of their venues. So that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. None of the other lads getting involved this week, but let us know if that's what you'd like to see. More of the lads from the channel getting involved, you know, we can maybe get some debates going. Who knows? Let us know what you think. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, as it helps us out massively. And as always, get your predictions in down in the comments. For those that get it right, we'll put them up on screen next week. So thank you very much for joining us on Armchair Craic, and we'll see you again next week.